Yeah, now we are. Yeah, I think I blame Mr. JR for us not being on time because
It was my fault.
I forgot to go live. So it's his
Well,
fault.
I had to turn everything around because Richard scheduled this during the beginning of the Eagles Dolphins game. So
You know,
I had to sync.
I was thinking about that. So you're like 15 years approximately younger than I. I
Okay.
was a super sports fan, so that there was a time in my life I would not go somewhere to watch, because I wanted to watch a football game. And remember, on the West Coast, we had the best of both worlds. You could
Right.
wake up, and the game's on. Oh, it was
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
nice. But at some point in time, I think in my 50s, my interest still love sports, but my interest in like watching it kind of leveled off. So maybe you will grow up.
Actually, football is really the only television I watch.
I see.
I don't watch. I mean, this is it.
Your
I watch
Phillies
TV.
are listen, the Phillies might win the World Series. You don't pay
I
attention to
know,
that?
but I'm not a baseball fan. Now, I'll
Okay.
watch the World Series regardless of the Phillies being in it or not. I
Yeah.
mean, it's obviously cool because they are in it, but I like baseball in October, but that's it. I can't,
Quick
for me to sit and watch a baseball game in July, I'd rather hang myself.
a quick shout out. I saw Dawn. Dawn, I just because you don't always get recognized. I see you on there. Thank you for like being here and making jokes about us. But I wanted to thank you for all the work you've done on MMTLP. Just to let you know, we were talking about you before we started, and that's what we were talking about. So much appreciated from these two boys here. Uh,
Yeah.
anyway, anyway, not legal advice and Mr. JR here tonight. Certainly not legal advice, nothing to rely upon, not financial advice as usual. And again, I point this out. If you listen to us enough, you should know that. I shouldn't have to say it. Just by listening, you should know that you shouldn't be relying upon anything we say. Um, Tonight,
Nope. Just two
before we
guys
get,
having a conversation.
yeah, just two guys and a bad conversation oftentimes. Mostly JR's fault for that, by the way. Like every week, it's amazing to me, and JR pointed this out to me during the week, but people call and ask for the strangest topics to be discussed. And this week is no change. One, somebody called me, and one of them, somebody called JR. So tonight's topic is pickles. And, I'm a big pickle fan. How about you, JR?
So I actually make my own pickles every 3 or 4
Nice.
years. Yeah.
Nice.
It's a
Nice. So
recipe that my mom's twin sister gave to me. So
nice. So I have to be upfront. My mom made pickles too. She was from
yeah.
Eastern European. I hated my mom's pickles, to be honest. Uh, but I like sour dill pickles. That's what I
Really.
really like. I find homemade pickles a little too cucumbery for my
Yeah,
like.
well, yeah, and you gotta pick the cucumber off before it turns into basically a cucumber, but it's just a simple vinegar, water, sugar recipe, and they're fantastic. You can't stop eating them.
Well, thanks for suggesting that topic, JR. That was much appreciated. The other topic, and this one I have no idea where it comes from. Your favorite potato. What's your favorite potato?
Red potato. I
Yeah,
like red
so I
potatoes.
knew you were going to give me some kind of answer like that. The obvious answer is Mr. Potato Head. Come on, come on, come on. All right. Now,
Your humor escapes me every week.
isn't that great?
Yeah,
Great. I think that's the most important thing in humor is consistency, by the way.
yeah, it
By the
is.
way, Busy, who probably won't watch tonight, hopefully, he's complaining about my hats. My problem with my hats is where my hair grows the best, and no comments there, JR. Where my hair grows the best is like on the bozo parts. So as a result, whenever I put a hat on, it looks like it's sitting on my head as opposed to fitting on my head.
You look like you're getting out of a clown car with the
Yes,
clown on.
yes, yes, yes. I constantly call myself Bozo because I have Bozo hair, not because of my Bozo character. Although some might differ on that too. Now, before we go into these really important topics tonight, and we're going to discuss our usual MMTLP, MMAT, which we don't always discuss, FingerMotion, GTII, SEC, and the Eagles. Four quick things. So I met my wife on a dating site. We just clicked.
That's actually a good one.
You like that one? Okay. I did a theatrical. I did a theatrical performance about puns. It was a play on words.
Nah, not so good. Nah, that
I'm
one
gonna
was a
try.
bust.
I'm gonna try Velcro instead of shoelaces. Why not? KNOT, by the way. And last but not least, knowing how to pick locks has opened a lot of doors for me.
Look, you should have just stuck with the first one. You should have
Okay.
ended at the
All
first
right.
one and moved on.
All right. So before we go into the talking about the tickers we often do and the bad SEC and all that nonsense, and we may have a guest in about 20 minutes. We'll see. I asked JR and he couldn't really give me the answer, but I just want to throw it out. It's like one of these basic things, you like, let's say it's a voting machine. You just kind of accept that it's going to work, and hopefully it does. Yeah, right. So what I asked him was about like the ticker. So, and I'm just going to use FingerMotion just because that's kind of something we talk about or have been recently. So I see the price move. I have no idea how that's calculated. I have no idea who's watching over that. I have no idea whether that can be manipulated internally and externally. And I'm going to distinguish between the two. So, like FingerMotion on Friday, just for example, it looked like there were a lot more shares bought when it was going up than when it was going down. So it kind of looked odd. So some people might think that that was a manipulation of the stock price, literally laddering down the stock price. I'm saying different than that. When the calculation is done, how do I know the calculation is accurate? Even if they did it as they should have, how do I know that the program that's making that calculation is accurate? Nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever explains it. It's another one of those dark holes. So to the extent that there's nonsense going on in the marketplace, why don't we assume there's nonsense going around in the calculation of prices?
Well, it's what did we go? You and I talked about this weeks ago. It's how do you know there's no man behind the curtain going, okay, today it's going to be 6.469. Tomorrow it's going to be 6.769. You know what I mean? You don't know. And it's one thing that how do they figure it out? How is it determined?
I agree 214% with that. Speaking of 214%, we talk about share lending. So I'm going back. I'm keeping it on FingerMotion for a second. So FingerMotion, the price that the shares were being lent out at on Friday was approximately 230%. So Fidelity, just use them as an example, they're making 230% minus whatever they have to pay to their shareholders who either okay it or don't okay it, and they just ignore it. And by the way, I'm certain they ignore the directions also, because what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst? So they paid, I was thinking about that. So let's say you didn't agree to have Fidelity give your shares away to cover finger shorts. And let's say they're getting paid 230. Let's say they're paying you 35% on that 230. 35% is not insignificant. That's what, 3%, almost 3% a month. So your choice to challenge that would be, I'm going to return that money and I'll challenge that they did it without my authorization. I think that's what they're counting on, that you won't return the money and won't contest it. Because obviously if you disagreed with the share lending and it had to be unwound, you'd also have to return whatever you were paid.
So I got an interesting email today from Fidelity about their share lending program. In fact, I meant to forward it to you. I just didn't. I have it. And so I've been with Fidelity for 20 years now. I've been locked up in a 401k plan for 20 years. And 401k plans are not supposed to have share lending programs. But I transferred to qualified IRA, probably last year, right around this time.
Thank you, Al, by the way.
And this is the first. Now I have a significant amount of shares in one of these stocks that's heavily shorted. And this is the first time I had ever gotten an email about the program. It wasn't related to a specific ticker, but it asked if it gave me information on the program and said to contact them for more information. So I plan on contacting them this week because I want to hear what they have to say. But I did not, I did not see any disclosures. But there was an interesting line in the email that said, please know that they're being lent out to short sailors, and sometimes because they get lent out, sometimes the price gets depressed.
Sometimes, but that's upon your inquiry, right?
Right.
They didn't say go look at your subscription agreement or your whatever. It says blank. They clarified, right? And, I told you I looked at mine, and maybe it's there. Maybe it's somewhere in there, but I haven't seen it. And I told you I made a document request for them in my arbitration to give me all disclosures they made to me with regard to the share lending program. And I guarantee you they didn't make those specific disclosures, because if they told you that we may lend the shares out to shorts, and that may deflate your stock price, that might discourage some people from entering into the share lending program, especially when the return is more modest than the 230% that Fidelity is getting now. But, the whole point again is I think that's what drives, we were talking about it. What drives this? I think because ultimately they all need the brokers to participate. They need the brokers to lend the shares. Right. Without the brokers, there is no huge amount of naked shorting or counterfeiting. That's without that 230% return, the brokers aren't doing it. So, perhaps, and, I was thinking about that. So I was thinking about usury, and, I was thinking about ham. So if you're on the streets of New York, and you go borrow money from the guy who owns the market, and he charges you 300% a week. And if you don't pay up, he has his buddy come and visit you once nicely, and the second time maybe not so nicely. Right. And I was thinking, these guys, they're basically loan sharks. That's what they are, charging 230. How could that possibly be not unconscionable?
Well, it goes back to what we talked about last week. They should be required to disclose the entire amount that they're making on those shares. I mean, they are your shares. So it would seem like I would think they have a duty to disclose how much they're making. They make it seem like they're going to give your shares out and they're going to pay you, when the reality is you're making pennies on the dollar, and they're probably making 5 times the amount that they're paying you for those shares.
Hello, Ace, by the way. Nice to have you with us.
Oh, is Ace?
Yeah. By the way, I think the easiest way is just pass a law, right? You could pass a law and say the maximum interest rate that the brokers or anybody who's doing a share lending program is X percent. Yeah. Easy. Make it, and like in California, that's what I was thinking about. So in California, you can have a broker arranged transaction. And if it's a broker arranged transaction, usually those are real estate transaction, there's no interest cap.
Well, the way it should work is they're my shares. Fidelity shouldn't be the middleman. Fidelity should be out of the way. And the person that wants those shares should be coming directly to me, and I should set the price. If you want them, you're going to pay for them. It should be that simple.
I think because that I looked for. So I think they have some kind of language in their customer agreements where they kind of suggest that maybe they could get different compensation than you would. They don't they don't specify, they're not on point, but they kind of allude to it. But it's a complete ripoff, and that's what generates the demand. Well, that's what generates the supply of shares or locates or whatever. Without that, there's nothing there. So,
Right.
we talk about all kinds of possible solutions, what we could do, enforcement, settlement in 2 days. We talked about that. Bring back the uptick rule, all those kind of things. If you set a cap of 15% on share lending, that's it. Max, that's done. That's not a problem. They can't
Yeah.
make the money. They won't lend the shares.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. So, and I think most of the time we've learned in these cases, sometimes they do it without consent. On top of that, they would probably say that after you get your first statement, you should notice that you're getting money. You're generating some interest income.
Right.
Okay, but I don't know how closely people monitor their accounts. I don't know if they know that there's an L that might be there that suggests it's in the share lending program. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, it would be nice for them to get rid of that. Following up on that because we're talking about FingerMotion.
Right.
And, I did a video about that because I don't know when it's going to, this is my view, not financial and not legal advice. Could be 100% wrong, or maybe 99% wrong. I have no idea what it's going to do. I believe it has good fundamentals. So I believe the stock will do well as a company. Since I bought it, it's green. So for me, it's a green investment. But as to like a squeeze, I have no idea when and if it will do that.
Right.
I think it will most likely do that if it does when I don't expect it to do that. I think that's true also because logically speaking, in my mind, is when the shorts are on notice, they can do things to interfere. And by the way, I have no problem. It's not like and you and I talk about this all the time. We expect things to happen. We're also lawyers, so we have experience in deals going south, all kinds of deals. So the fact that a deal might go up and down and surprise us is not a surprise. It's to be expected. And what I think is, I think the company's sound, so I'm here for the time being and I'm made money. If it's going to squeeze what I believe, and I have no information to support this, but I've mentioned this to JR too, it's going to be a big volume day. There'll be big buying, and the only way that the shorts have been able to depress the price is not with a big amount of shares, but after buying has stopped, and then they start selling or shorting very kind of small increments, but there's very few buyers at that point because they've been exhausted. But but if it's to run, there will be a day of a 10 million plus share day, and the shorts will not be able to withstand that capital. That's my view. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I expect one day in pre-market, if it does happen, you're going to see like 5 million traded pre-market, and it'll be out the door. But I don't expect it on a day that I'm expecting it to happen. I'm not. And I understand how frustrated people get when things don't happen when they think it should. And like Friday, just to point on Friday, the price, and you and I talked about this, the price action on Finger was 15%. It moved 15%. And there was I could understand that if, the CEO of Finger resigned, let's say, and there was a market reaction to an event, but there was no event. So it just looked naughty. And I posted an X or a tweet. I said, even if Gary Gensler was out getting a massage when FingerMotion was trading, his very gifted masseuse even recognized the fact that shenanigans were going on with regard to the stock price. It was obvious. And it's the other part, and I'm sorry I'm hogging the mic.
No, that's all right. Hog the mic because I got my eyes on the Eagles game.
Okay. And the other part is it's not like they're not aware of this particular security. Just like MMTLP, they know. So there have to be people monitoring it so they know what's going on. So really, it's a disgrace, another disgrace. But I accept it. And again, I expect when the shorts are not prepared, they're going to get, if it's going to go, they will get bombarded and they won't be able to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I go back to is, and I've seen so many tweets like this, that retail doesn't move a stock, blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right. I get it. Retail doesn't move the stock. Well, then how the hell did it drop 26 some percent or whatever it was? I mean, it popped up to 725. And then all of a sudden, within what, 15 minutes, it's back down to like 620, 630. That wasn't retail. So it's sickening, obviously, when you see that, because people's accounts are turning red, but just the level of blatant manipulation that's right before your eyes, and nothing gets done about it. It's the same MO time and again, and here we are still talking about it. So
Yeah.
I'm like you. I don't watch the ticker as much as you do. I happen to I got an alert that it was up, and then I started watching it, but that was about it. I mean, what are you down? Are you down to like every 60 seconds now? You check it.
40 every 42 seconds. I'm keeping track.
42. All right.
Yeah, 42. Yeah. I'm actually checking it. The problem is I'm checking it tonight, and it's not moved at all. It's been like flat. I can't figure it out. Big Vic, you can see Big Vic's question.
Let's say Robin Hood, who can constantly ask me to lend my shares, actually is lending my shares without permission, and I find out. What type of crime is it? I don't know if it's a crime per se, but it would be.
I like the per se part, by the way.
Well, let's face it. There's really no crime in the financial services, industry. It's
technically,
it's all accepted behavior.
Yeah. Technically, it could be a crime. It could be like, might be fraud. Could be something like there's these particular crimes or particular actions. Could be a theft. It certainly would be like a civil wrong, like a conversion or a trespass to chattel. Do you remember that from law school? Trespass to chattel? Yeah.
Yes.
Who
the hell even uses that word?
Nobody. No, but I've actually, honestly, in a couple complaints, I have. Actually.
Nobody.
I know.
Some asshole law professor that's writing a book.
Yeah, we're just kind of saying there's like certain things you learn in law school that are absolutely never going to be used in your lifetime.
You'll be embarrassed to say some of those words.
Yeah, everybody knows the same things you're never going to use.
My favorite will always be Lucy versus Zemer. He was as high as a Georgia pine.
Okay. What I liked was the rule against perpetuities, and everybody I asked still has no idea what that is. So that's all. That's all. No. Right? Explain to me the rule against perpetuities, JR.
Actually, I got my property book right back there. I can go grab it. I'm sure I have it written down somewhere. Or my wills and trusts, not property.
Yeah, that's right. Wills and trusts. Yeah. But it's one of the no, there's a bunch of things in law that you're not going to use. It's like learning geometry, right? How much do you use geometry in your daily life? Maybe not a lot. All right, let's
like those silly civil rules of procedure. Who uses those things?
Yeah, who uses those? Okay. Anyway, so Finger moved a lot, no events. So it's interesting. You would think since I go back to my Palantir, since I'm on my Palantir kick now, after I confirmed that they use it. They have the software, so they have the information. So Palantir software was designed to see shenanigans going on in the marketplace. So they see, and they spent millions of dollars for the software. I've never seen anything where they disavowed the effectiveness of the software. So they see this same stuff anyway. They're just electing not to act. That's all. So I know Ham is doing the thing with the truck and the billboard on during the week, I think. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think he's doing it Wednesday because there's a SEC meeting or something.
I would have loved to go to that, by the way. I would have loved.
It's an enforcement meeting, some kind of enforcement meeting.
Why don't you go? Why don't you go and ask a question?
I'm traveling for work, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm thinking about going, but I don't think I can get there. But it would be great. My dog needs a flea bath that day, so I think I'm booked. No, but I mean, hopefully it'll be it'll catch. I mean, how could it not catch attention? It'll be interesting to see what happens to FingerMotion during the week, what the impact is. How, yeah. Again, like I said, I expect it will move whenever it decides to move, and I don't expect anything different. And I don't think anybody else knows, honestly, except if you're maybe Univest or FingerMotion or maybe the biggest shareholder, perhaps. I don't know.
Good grief.
What
Sorry.
happened? Okay. Oh, you're watching the game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Eagles just fumbled. Miami got it back.
I'm sorry. Let's listen. We were talking about FingerMotion. That's bad FingerMotion, obviously. All right. So let's briefly just address MMTLP. So as far as I know, things are moving forward. People are still actively pressing forward in everything they're doing. I know people are pressing forward legally. I know Mark didn't he just file something against Capybara that could relate to any of these tickers? Because that was one thing, because I think it may end up like that there is a consortium of shorts, and that if you maybe break apart one, you might get information that was surprising. But anyway, so there's legal stuff. I'm doing my arbitration, all that nonsense. I have initial hearing sometime next month. I'll know. I know that the Congress stuff is still going on. I know there may be other legal stuff going on. There may be other things that are going on, but I know it's active. I know that's active, and I know that, to me, that's positive. And I hope, and I don't know anything. I'm just speaking for myself. I don't know anything firsthand. I hear things second and third hand. So that's what I'm basing my statement on, and just the general tenor. It appears to be going in a positive direction. So I look forward to that. Any comments yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff happening. There's still lots of people meeting with Congress. I mean, Rich, I know Rich just sent out, I think, 4,000 plus emails last week. I'm sure he was working.
Is that Rich or Don?
I call him Rich. He goes by both, Rich or Don.
And is that Fizz? Is that Fizz or Fizz?
It's Fizz.
Okay.
No, I mean, there's still a lot of people working in the background tirelessly over this stuff. I just saw Drew had posted something about some stuff happening maybe this week. There's just a lot of stuff to be positive about. And I know it's hard. It's hard, especially with, excuse me, with what's going on with MMAT. But at the MMTLP train is moving forward, and I just don't think anything's going to stop it. Does that mean it gets resolved tomorrow? No. Does it mean it gets resolved next week? I don't know. Does that mean it doesn't get resolved for another 6 months? I have no idea there either. But I'm still, and you and I talk about this all the time, I'm still 110% confident at some point it's going to get resolved. What that resolution looks like, I don't know. But
I'm answering Ace. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to interrupt you because it's fun to interrupt you. I understand about Palantir. We don't use them. It's the SEC that's using them. So they have the access to the information. So I'm not saying use Palantir. I'm saying the SEC already has information that they garnered from Palantir. And that's what we would like to have. So to the extent that SEC ever pretends that they don't know, they know.
I don't listen to Gandalf. I don't particularly care for that gentleman.
How about Edward? How do you feel about Edward?
I like Edward, that Gandalf guy. Too much hair for me.
I agree with you. That Gandalf guy, Edward.
The wand and the robe, it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I know. He has a funny accent too. I don't, whatever. Yes, and I know he knows we're kidding. I'm sure he's watching somewhere here. I think he's here as Ace in the Hole, by the way. I think Gandalf is here as Ace in the Hole. Even the picture he took. Wow, pretty amazing. So whatever they can do, I don't know if you had finished. I rudely interrupted you as you were talking about MMTLP.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Okay. Obviously it's moving forward, with the pace of snail, but it's moving forward. Definitely, compared to 6 months ago, a lot of progress has been made.
Yes.
And listen, I talk about it, just so you know, in my silly arbitration. In my silly arbitration, I talk about the stuff in Congress constantly. So it helps me. It gives me something to talk about. I put Senator Blank's letter in there because I don't like to say his name wrongly or incorrectly.
Senator Crapo.
Thank you. Thank you. I put his letter in there so they have that. I said, go educate yourself. Look at all Congress is doing, you know, because it's hard for the attorney for Fidelity to continue to say there's nothing there when Congress is saying there's something there. So that's great. You know, whatever. And definitely in the overtime, even though it's at a snail's pace, there's definitely been movement. So thanks to everybody out there for that. Anything else about MMTLP you want to say? And by the way, I don't think anybody could say when or if it's going to conclude. Just like we were talking about FingerMotion, when something's going to happen. That's the only thing I can tell you is I don't know when those kind of things are going to happen.
Yeah, you know, I guess the only thing I would say is, and I saw a post that I mean, look, people are depressed right now. I get it, and with the whole thing with MMAT, you know, it took it to a whole new level, and I'm empathetic to that. And you know, if anybody is feeling super down and super depressed and needs someone to talk to, please DM me. I mean, I just, you know, people are under a lot of stress right now, and you know, I know, you know, and Drew does it too. Everybody talks in very generalities, and there's a reason we do that, and we have to do that. But you know, you got to keep the faith. You got to keep every day plugging away. But you know, if you are feeling down and depressed about this and need someone to talk to, DM me. I'm happy to take time out of my day and talk to someone that's feeling down over all this.
Yeah,
so.
and I want to add too, like JR is saying, if anybody is down and has any problems, please DM him, not me. Yeah, I mean, DM him.
Let's
that
be
was a joke. That was a joke. DM him.
You know, part of why we do this, though, Richard, is to educate. And as you and I talked about this very early on, was to add a little bit of comic relief and humor. And you know, everybody needs to put a smile on their face. You know, sometimes you really just, at the end of the day, you have to say to yourself, I got to turn this frown upside down, and you got to push forward. So, and Richard's joking. He would take the phone call in a heartbeat. You know, again, if you're getting to the point where you're just starting to feel desperate and depressed, you know, pick up the phone and call. So that's all I mean, no, DM us and then we'll figure out how to get in touch. But absolutely.
And you know, I can see, you know, we're obviously sympathetic, and we could see how somebody could be, especially if it's their life savings or it puts them in a box or it causes all kinds of problems. We can see obviously how that could be depressing. And we're happy to do whatever we can to ease your distress. And part of it is because we have a longer, even though we're not securities lawyers, again, we've been in a lot of situations that were problematic. And because of that, it gave us a different view on things, and it may be helpful to kind of disclose that to people, might make them feel better. Because you know, just like on Friday, you know, we were talking about MMTLP. I saw the reaction on Friday to a FingerMotion, and there was like anger and hurt and despair. I saw that too. I did not feel that way. To be honest, I did not feel that way at all. I just figured it was another day, just another day. But I understand. No. I understand and expect that other people won't be so lucky to have that background and experience. So please, please, if you're feeling anything, reach out to somebody who can help you. And if you need us, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to, you know, I mean, and none of us are experts on this stuff either. We're all in this with, you know, the same anger and you know, feelings of disgust over the lack of enforcement and the lack of what our regulators are supposed to be doing. So So, you know, you don't have to be an expert to see the crime and hear the crime and understand the crime. The other thing is look at what the MMTLP people have done. You know, I mean, these are blue collar workers, white collar workers. They're not securities experts. I mean, I haven't met a security expert in the MMTLP community yet, yet I'm amazed at what all we've accomplished. So, you know, it really, and you and I have talked about this a lot. It's grassroots organization at its best.
Yeah, and
So,
again, you know, we said it, we mean it. From the reason why we got involved was because the original stories, hearing people's stories and what they were suffering, and that was like when this happened. That's 10 months ago. So we
yeah,
are listen. That's what got us interested and got us involved. So
yeah,
we are sensitive to that, and we're sensitive every time that events happen. All I can tell you is that we may see it slightly differently. And ultimately, you know, just because something happens doesn't mean your strategy is wrong.
right.
So, you know, you might believe in a company and somebody might do something to impact that company, but that doesn't mean that company won't recover because your strategy might be correct. Just like, you know, FingerMotion, when that capybara report came out, it went
Yeah,
from whatever, it dropped like 35% in one afternoon, but it regained that almost the entirety of that over the next few days. So it sucks. I understand it, but take a deep breath, take a step back, and let another day pass, because the next day may give you a new view on life and a new view on stock. And we all understand how, you know, it's the part that's the hardest to understand or surprising is people talk about the naked shorting and the counterfeiting, and you expect it to be done discreetly. Like you expect people to try to really hide this as a practice. And then you
right,
notice that it's like blatant in your face. And
right.
that really is tough to deal with. The fact of how blatant it is. It's even
Yeah,
tougher to deal with than this stupid hat that's moving on top of my head. But again, we do understand, and we do relate to it. We're in this. So let's go on to MA. We're going to talk about GTII because there's that new case that I wanted to talk about, but wanted to talk a little bit about MMAT. And I know that JR, his kind of exposure to and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but his exposure to MMAT is more limited. He wasn't a stockholder. I don't think he is a stockholder. He's
oh,
seen, like, you know, tweets and references to it, so he's kind of aware of what's going on, but it's not his main focus. And since that
no.
it's not his main focus, I'll let him go first.
Well, I mean, look, we saw the filings, we saw the tweets that are out there that they're, you know, I think they're initiating. There's a vote on December 11th, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. There's a vote on December 11th, and it's regarding a reverse split. And I think that if the reverse split is voted down, there's some type of poison pill in the filing. I don't know what that is, and I could totally be wrong. Again, I'm just trying to piece together piece together some of the tweets, that some of the more credible tweets that I saw. I'm not in MMAT because I don't. Let me go back. I want to make sure everybody understands. I have not been in MMAT, but it has nothing to do with the company or the fundamentals or anything like that. That's just my investing style. I'm in two stocks, and that's enough for me right now. And MMAT is not one of them. So that's kind of my investment policy statement. That's the only reason I'm not in MMAT, and I have no plans to get an MMAT because of the two other stocks that I'm in. So that's really all I know, and I only pay attention to it, but for the fact that there's a lot of MMTLP, obviously community members that are in MMAT, and that's how they became MMTLP holders, because of the special dividend they got back when the Torchlight MMAT or Metamaterials merger occurred. So I understand it from that point, but that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah. So
And now I'm going to turn the camera off and get some ice. Excuse me.
okay. Yeah, so my experience with MMAT is a little different. I was interested in MMA, excuse me. I was interested in MMAT long before I got involved with MMTLP. I think I got interested in MMAT because of the battery separators. Their product that they were involved in either developing or manufacturing, or their involvement with the technology that was supposed to design to prevent battery fires. And specifically, it involved electric vehicles, or the idea was electric vehicles, and they required batteries, and there were occasionally battery fires in electric vehicles. So the reason why I got involved with that is because I have an interest in Tesla. I own a bunch of Tesla, or I own some Tesla. I wish it was a bunch of. I own some Tesla, and Tesla obviously is an EV company.
Sure.
And so it interested me. And I know at one point in time, their office, the MMT office and Tesla office in Canada, were in the same office park. So I had those connections, so I was interested in it.
Right.
So I kept my shares up until about a week ago. And I'll back up. And again, not financial advice, not legal advice. I figured I'd tell you my experience, and you could do as you choose, but at least you could have the benefit of my experience. So when all this started with the MMTLP, I reached out to both MMAT and I reached out to NextBridge. More than once, I believe, to both. And nobody from MMAT responded. So I think I was either I may have been inquiring about the share count or something along that more impacted MMTLP and then NextBridge. But nobody responded. I'm sure I reached out to investor relations also. It annoyed me. I believe I reached out to somebody else in the community and kind of told them about it and thought about pursuing it, but elected not to because I didn't think it was going to be beneficial to the community as a whole. Mm-hmm. Eventually, people from NextBridge did contact me. So they eventually responded. So that made me feel better about the people at NextBridge. But to this day, nobody from MMAT ever contacted me. So, but be that as it may, I passed on that. I thought that was not a great move, but whatever. When I saw the filing about that Mr. Palikaris had been replaced, it concerned me because of the timing. Now I know, and we spoke, I think, to Mark. Mark explained, and I then looked up the rule also. From a material event, you have 4 business days to advise the public by doing a Form 8 that a material event has happened. In this case, the whatever you want to call the resignation, departure of Mr. Palikaris. They did it either on the 6th or 7th day, but technically 4 business days. It still concerned me because partly because of the prior encounter where they weren't particularly forthright. The fact that up until today, I haven't heard a word really from MMAT about MMTLP kind of annoyed me, concerned me. And because of the statement that Palikaris was removed without explanation. Hasn't been an explanation to this point, not as of today. So in my mind, a company that has not been transparent and continues not to be transparent is a concern for me, and that's why I sold my shares.
Right.
I did. And I took a loss. It wasn't like I made money on it, but I just felt a discomfort about it, and it had nothing to do with the reverse stock split or the new guy who came in, Jim Fasaro, I believe, is the new guy, because he might be great, by the way. The company might do fantastic, but I had enough signals to me that if a client came to me and asked them whether they should invest in this, and I was their attorney, I'd have to tell them no. So that's the decision I made. And I know I could be wrong, and I know that the company may turn around, but there were just too many things. And then I looked one more thing that kind of concerned me, and I don't know if it's meaningful or not. But somebody had pointed out, they alleged that Palikaris had appeared on behalf of MMAT after the date he was terminated. And I checked out, and it turned out there was a YouTube post on some conference in Canada that happened on the 5th, but was posted on the 12th. So you might get the idea that it was done on the 12th. And you might argue that the company probably should have intervened and said, don't post it because he's no longer the CEO.
Right.
So, okay. But there's a second occasion, and that one's dated the 12th. It's called the Fireside Chat. It was with Bernard Kress. It's with an organization called SPIEAR. And that was presented on the 12th also, with Palikaris being the CEO of NextBridge. And it's still there, by the way. It's still up. So the company, still up. So the company has done nothing to disavow that. And if it was done after the 10th, to me, that's not kosher. And if it was done before the 10th, the company should either comment or remove it. Or is that good or bad?
That's good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, in the background, JR is watching the Eagle game, and his reaction might reflect how well the Eagles are doing. So,
hey, listen, everybody, listen. I don't know why Richard scheduled this at 8:30. I will tell you, when he told me it was, well, again, I only find out about this stuff as it's posted on Twitter, and I just go with the flow. And I saw it on Twitter. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? But it's all good. It's all good. Just as, they just scored. So come on, cut me some slack.
I figured I can get him to halftime, and then he's a free man. I just think that they should have intervened to remove the post because it's not accurate. So to me, all those taken together, I just got to bail. And again, it may be great. The new guy may do fantastic. The product lines may be wonderful, but I just can't stay in it. There're just too many red flags for me. And the guy who took over, I was thinking about this. The guy who took over, Jim Fusaro, he must be a takeover guy. So there's certain kind of CEOs. Their jobs are to take over companies that may be struggling and turn them around. And they make their money on the stock. So they make, a decent amount of money, but not like, crazy money for a CEO. And if he turns it around, then he'll make a ton of money on the stock. So I think it was disclosed, he's being paid $500,000 a year as a CEO. You might get some other benefits. You might get a nice car. JR might send him gifts. Who knows? But that's not a ton of money. But he makes his money if the company turns around. So he's motivated to do that. Well, it might work out great. A friend of mine, his father-in-law, now deceased, that's what he did. And Ham always talks about Herbalife. And one of the versions of Herbalife, my friend's father-in-law was the guy who turned it around. Because Herbalife, I think, has had it's been an interesting run because it's had problems, I think, with the FDA at times. And like our problems with the SEC, their problems with the FDA. And every time it had an FDA problem, obviously the stock would take a dump. And so anyway, he's in that, and he made his money on the stock. He would turn it around. So the new guy, he appears to be a turnaround guy. That might reflect the status of the company, but maybe not. It sounds like they have products. It sounds like they have revenue. But until they disclose the reason why Palikaris left, or the reason why they can't disclose the reason that Palikaris left, if it were me, I would not touch it. Me, myself. Just makes me uncomfortable. And it reminds me a lot of Mullen, about the reverse split. If I were in the position of voting on a reverse split at this point in time, and I didn't know this 10 months ago, but there is no chance no matter what the circumstances are, am I ever going to vote for a reverse split? I saw it in Mullen twice. All it does is and this might be different, of course. This, not all of them are the same, but it appears that the general rule is if you reverse split and raise the price, those same scumbags that shorted you down to 14 cents, which I think is where MMAT is after hours, 14.8 cents, something like that. Those same scumbags will short you down from $1 back to 10 cents. And if you had, if you're, and I'm not saying that's good, but if your stock now is worth 50% of what it was before, after they're done, it'll be worth 10% of what it was before. So again, not financial advice, not legal advice, but the next time I have an opportunity to vote on a reverse stock split, the vote will be no. So I don't know, and I don't know if that's going to be approved. You were going to say something. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I agree with you. I would not ever vote for a reverse split because we've seen time and again what it does.
I understand the motivation. The motivation is they want to stay. They don't want to get delisted. And if you don't, and it's unclear exactly what the period is. It's either 10 consecutive days or 20 consecutive days. And I think that the SEC or the exchange itself, would be NASDAQ in this case, might have discretion. But that's why people do it. They do a reverse split so they can get over $1 so they can stay not delisted, and they have to keep that for 10 consecutive days. And like Mullen, what happened was it stayed over $1 for, I think, 1 consecutive day. And then 9 days it dumped and everybody lost, another 50% of their interest. The only people that I saw make out in Mullen were the CEO made out okay. He had a lot of shares, sold a lot of them, and made a good amount of money. And just like MMAT, they asserted they had great products, electric products, great battery technology. They did something. I remember they had some guy who was an outside guy who, this kind of reminds me of MMAT in one way. So they had an outside guy who professed that he had an agreement with Saudi Arabia to open up a facility in Saudi Arabia, and it would enable Mullen to get a piece of some $5 billion contract, something like that. So Mullen, that had income of like $43, this was going to be, astronomical. And this guy said it a few times. I think his name was Lawrence Harge, something like that. He mentioned it. They didn't say anything. They let it play out. And while they were letting it play out, people would buy stock. It was probably prior to at least one of the reverse stock splits. And eventually, maybe 2-3 weeks later, they disavowed his I guess, authority to bind them. But it was long after they had benefited from the flow of stock and keeping the price elevated. And to me, not commenting and letting things play out without commenting or removing them, again, just sounds sleazy. That's not like how, I don't think Apple is going to be caught playing videos of their former CEO after Cook leaves. I think they'll pay attention. The fact that they don't pay attention to those kind of details is something to be concerned about.
Yeah, I agree. I am a little confused over his removal. I'm confused that that he was still acting in a CEO capacity to the public, and according to the filings, he was removed. So that gives me pause for concern. Now, there's a host of reasons that we might not know about, we may never know, but I just, something just doesn't sit right with me with it.
Yeah, for me, for the easiest thing for me is that they can't say it. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe they have an agreement, and maybe they signed some kind of agreement between the company and Palacaris, and nobody can talk about it. Maybe that's fine. all I have to do is say is we have an agreement. We can't talk about it. That's it.
Right.
That's it. That's a response. A
Right.
non-response, all it does is make guys like me speculate about why they're not saying it.
Right.
And and they can't expect otherwise.
Right.
So it's troublesome. Again, maybe perfectly innocent, can be resolved, but go ahead and tell us why. Give us an
Right.
explanation why you made the change and why it sounded like it was made not with, a plan and letting things get out easily done so there wasn't damage to the stock. Seemed like it was done on a whim because of something. And
Right.
again, I feel bad for everybody who's invested there because, like you said, a lot of those people are also invested in MMTLP. So it's a double F, to be
Right.
honest. So I'm really sensitive to that. I know, like, we were saying like earlier, how many stories we heard from MMTL people that were devastated. Same thing with
Mhm.
MMAT again, because there's a cross ownership. There may
Yeah.
be people that are devastated, and we're sympathetic to that. And if you
Yeah.
need to reach out, please do so, and make a stink about it. Don't go quietly. Make a stink
Yeah.
until they give you an explanation. You deserve an explanation. Really.
Yeah, you do. There was a gentleman, I think it was Karma, not Karma, not Karma Drew, but another guy named Karma wrote a letter, and it was. I mean, it's a good letter, and everyone should take the time to read it and do exactly as it says. Your voices need to be heard. You
Yeah.
know,
I yeah. I mean, it's just not something that should be accepted.
right?
And again, it's probably part of this is I think we have started a kind of a new trend. In the
Hmm.
past, they would tell you, the sky is red, and
Hmm.
we'd say, okay, whatever, we just accept it. And nobody would contest it. And from this point forward, and I think the reason why people are here, the reason why Ham has all the people, and William, there's a series of people. The reason are because people are not just going to accept it anymore. So
Right.
we do respond. We like I know JR sent out his FOIA appeal, and I'm in arbitration, and I'm working with Busy on something else. So we don't accept it, but we expect everybody to be as dynamically involved. And again, I've mentioned this before, especially the people that are down in the dumps. Being actively involved in trying to get something done will
Yeah.
make you feel better.
Yes.
Action beats depression. That is a real psychological concept. So be active because it'll help you feel better. Really,
Mhm.
because we know it's not right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing for me is I can't sit by and just bitch and not do anything. I have to take an active role, and I mean, I took an active role because of the emotional toll that this had taken. The other thing is I took an active role because right from the start with this, from the minute the halt button got hit, I just knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was. I didn't, I mean, we all speculated at the time, but just, something just didn't feel right with it. And you and I even talked about that. Uh, and we both started reading and reading and researching and reading and researching and bouncing ideas off of each other. I mean, you and I were connected as early as mid-February on this. And I will tell you, taking an active role has taken my mind off of kind of my own, the fact that I'm locked up with everybody else as well too. Um, and that, I mean, I've learned more about securities law in the last 10 months. I've learned more about, I mean, I can cite some damn case law on FOIA. I'm pretty impressed with myself, actually. I mean, the sheer stuff that I'm learning. I mean, the first level of research I was doing was in 211C and reading over that rule. And I read the Federal Register about half a dozen times. I read over that piggyback rule. You and I bounced stuff off each other there. I had another attorney give me some thoughts on it. And Yeah, all that stuff took my mind off of it. And and even doing this to educate people and talk through ideas and kind of keep people motivated, keep people dialed in. And it all helps. It all, at the end of the day, it all keeps me motivated and pushing forward.
Yeah, and I was going to say is, and you shouldn't feel bad if you make mistakes, because we do. Boy, have we made
Oh
mistakes.
yeah.
And you shouldn't not act because you're afraid to admit you made a mistake. Sometimes people don't want to change something they've done because they just don't want to acknowledge they were wrong, even if
Right.
it's detrimental to themselves. So it's no big deal. Listen, unfortunately, especially in securities and money, there are a lot of con men. And the reason why con men are effective is because they're good at being con men. That's why they're con men.
Sure.
They're able to make you feel comfortable in their decision. They're able to convince you. So there's no reason to feel bad about getting scammed or making wrong decisions. Just make the right decision when you know the right information. And I know it's not easy sometimes, but I kind of try to keep that in mind. Try not to let the emotion and like beating myself up over a bad decision make me make another bad decision. At some point in time, you got to correct and take responsibility and move on. So,
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the great thing about you and I kind of partnering together, because we bounce ideas off of each other all the time. And sorry, they made a really good play. And I talked you off the cliff a couple times, and you've kind of said, well, I'd throw an idea at you, and you're like, no, try this or try that. And that's a nice thing of I think that's one of the great things of our relationship is we're able to bounce those ideas
yeah.
off of each other and recognize that we're not perfect. We're
Yeah.
gonna
And
make
also, we talk about this. We happen to fit pretty well personality wise.
yeah.
So we kind of call each other names all the time, and it's fun. We take it in fun. We don't get angry. And that's kind of perpetuated in what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, but ultimately we feel bad. Hopefully the MMAT situation will resolve. Hopefully there'll be a statement that'll explain the situation and clarify it for everybody. But I'm sympathetic to everybody who's in that position, and you should demand the clarity. Really, there's no reason you shouldn't.
So we got a good question down here, and I know we wanted to segue into GTII.
Uh-huh.
And that question you see down there, it says,
Yes.
how long can FINRA continue to extend Alpine's
right.
ruling? I think that individual is talking about the NSCC ruling. That's
Right.
not a FINRA enforcement action. That's something else. Is that
No,
related or
no, I think that's a confirming the prior ruling. So in other words, it starts off with
Okay.
it starts off with a hearing officer, which is basically a trial court, and then FINRA has their own appellate review system, and then once it gets through that, then the SEC has a review, and then
Right.
if it gets through that, then it could go to federal court, kind of in that order.
Got
So they are blocking that review. Oh, okay. So what happens is that review keeps on getting extended while the appeal is pending, and that appeal is separate from that. That appeal is that injunction whereby FINRA tried to get an expedited expulsion of Alpine,
Mhm.
and Alpine got an injunction blocking that, and that's up on appeal. And while that's on appeal, the appellate divisions of FINRA don't want to complete the other case, which
Right.
is the expulsion case. So that's why they're waiting. And I would guess until the appeal is final, that proceeding will keep on getting continued. And I did that, and I think this is optics matter. I think I did either yesterday or the day before. I happened to do a video talking about that very subject, about the where it's going and how long it might take. We're going to talk about GTII anyway. So it was a great question and a great lead-in. GTII, again, I don't know if it's true, but people think it's related to FingerMotion because, like MMAT and MMTLP, there appears to be a lot of common retail ownership, maybe more than retail ownership, but a lot of common retail ownership. So GTII relates to FINRA's, or at least the Alpine arguments relate to FINRA's ability to conduct their own judicial system. And I think we talked about in a live stream or a video, I don't remember which one, we talked about Elon Musk and Mark Cuban had filed a amicus brief, which is means a friends of the court brief. So that's a brief filed by a non-party to the case who has a position. And they filed a brief in the Juraski case, which is an SEC case that says that the SEC shouldn't be having their own private legal system.
Right.
And this week there happened to be a new case that was filed. It's called Lebenthal versus FINRA. It was filed in the District of Columbia, and I don't know what Lebenthal did, but he was there was some kind of enforcement proceeding against Lebenthal. So he's in the securities business. He did something that FINRA didn't like, so they started a proceeding against him to go after his license or fine him or something.
Right.
He filed with a big law firm too, by the way. He filed a lawsuit in DC where the Alpine case is, claiming that FINRA doesn't have the legal authority to go after him using their enforcement proceedings.
Right.
And in their case, in the complaint, so when you file a case, the first document you file that initiates the case is called a complaint. And in the complaint, they actually cited the Alpine case and the language of the appellate Judge Walker in the Alpine case. So they're following the Alpine case. And the Alpine case, the issue will be whether FINRA has the authority to have their own judicial system. And so JR and I talk a lot about this. And we both believe that if Juraski, which is going to the Supreme Court, I think there's a hearing the end of November, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. If they're going the end of November, there'll be a decision by June, maybe earlier, but at latest probably June of 2024. And we think that if the Supreme Court says, for example, that the SEC either has to change its system, I guess that's a possibility, or that it has to pursue all relief through the federal courts, that will have a dramatic impact on FINRA. Because FINRA is one step removed. So a lot of the arguments that are made against in the Juraski case would even be more applicable in a case against FINRA. Right. And so just basically, and I'll let JR talk after this, basically what the claims are is they claim there's a constitutional argument, a separation of powers. There's a violation of the appointments clause, namely that the president should be appointing the judges, not the agency. Not the agency. A violation of the Fifth Amendment, that there's no due process. A violation of the Fifth Amendment in that there's no right of self-incrimination, which was interesting. So they were saying that if there's an enforcement proceeding brought by FINRA and it's brought within FINRA's own system, and they would have to admit to criminal misconduct, they can't assert the Fifth Amendment. And that's a deprivation of a constitutional right, which I thought was interesting. Plus, it wasn't fair. That basically wasn't fair.
So, I guess the one comment that I have was, you and I talked about this very early on, that when the appellate court found in favor of Alpine, we had both talked about how we were going to start to see more kind of court cases piling on this theory, this notion that FINRA is unconstitutional, and we're starting to see it. And that's typically how these things work. You know, the appellate court in the district, the DC appellate court, basically, you know, they opened up the door, and now you're starting to see current enforcement actions. People that are in enforcement actions right now go, hey, we got this case out here, we're going to pile in on this too. And why would they not? Again, that's a valid legal defense. There's no reason for them not to. In fact, I would make the argument that if they're not, they're incompetent and aren't providing good representation for their clients. So we're going to start to see more of these things pick up. But going back to one of the things that you had said about the hearing in November, you know, let's not get anybody's hopes up. Well, not hopes, because it's the Jaworski case, but the hearing, oral arguments are in front of the Supreme Court in November. We likely won't see any type of decision until maybe, or at the earliest, the spring. So yeah, that one's definitely going to be an interesting one to follow, and you and I are going to continue to follow it as it, you know, kind of evolves. So
yeah, we will follow it as closely as we can. to TBA.
yeah. Let's just say it's 11. What is it? The 29th of November?
November. Yes.
Yeah. 29th of November.
Yeah. And, you know, also, you know, you might watch a hearing, which is interesting. So you might watch an appellate hearing. So an appellate, the difference between like a trial and an appellate hearing, for example, is at a trial, you're trying the facts. At an appellate level, you're just trying the law. It's a legal question.
Right.
So you could go to an appellate hearing, and let's say, you know, before the Supreme Court, and Clarence Thomas likes the position against FINRA. So maybe he might ask FINRA 12 questions that you might think, wow, why is he like focusing just on FINRA? Why is he ignoring the other side? It might be an opportunity giving FINRA to educate, or the other side to educate the court. So sometimes the questioning might give you the wrong impression. That's why JR was saying you really don't know. You don't know.
You don't. You just don't know.
Yeah. Unless JR pays off a clerk or something like that, which he could. Or William might be able to sneak in. It's possible because he lives close by. I don't know. Okay. That was a bad play for the Eagles?
No, it's a good play. I'm like, all right, we're at an hour 12.
Okay.
Sorry, folks.
Hour 12. Well, we're going to go an hour and 15. I'll go quickly. Tesla's earnings, because I just wanted to finish off with the Tesla part. Tesla's earnings were somewhat disappointing, let's say, but it was pretty dour. The macro position of Elon Musk was pretty dour. So in other words, his view of the economy over the next year was pretty, conservative. So my point to him is, following up last week, he obviously, Tesla is the most shorted, probably the most naked shorted, and probably the most counterfeited stock that has been around for probably the last half a dozen years. Almost forced it out of business. And my suggestion to Elon was, now is the time, especially with the macro, so where the economy might stall to some degree, or in your opinion, might stall. Now's the time to press the shorts. If you can increase the market value of Tesla stock by attacking the shorts that you've already said are useless. I mean, you said that. There's no value to the shorts. And that's the legal shorts, not the illegal shorts.
Right.
But here's a free opportunity. And again, we welcome you. All these people would welcome you and your assistance in this. And not only would it benefit you personally by, tens and hundreds of billions of dollars, but it would benefit all your shareholders and everybody else that's being victimized by the shorts, and would make you a hero amongst the retail community. I really believe that. So I'm repeating what I say. I'll put it on there again. It's really for the benefit of Tesla shareholders and yourself and the wider community. And I think that you should consider doing that. Anything to add about that, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have a huge impact if Elon Musk kind of came out and really just put his voice in on this. I mean, again, I'm not in Tesla. I know you're heavy in Tesla, so I take what your word is. I take you know what you're talking about, and if it's the most heaviest shorted stock out there, yeah, he'd have a huge impact. So, and maybe sometimes that, we talk about this all the time. We don't know what the solution is going to be for all this to kind of get cleaned up. Maybe that is one solution. Someone like Musk starting to speak out and not sending tweets, but really speaking out about it and driving the issue like we are with MMTLP in Congress.
Yeah, I would happen to think that he, unlike us, he would be super influential to a community and he would get things done. So we urge you to join us and we welcome you. Really, we welcome you. And we understand you're a busy guy. You got 100 things to do. I understand that. But this is something that would really help a lot of people. So yeah, I think we'll end it there so that JR can watch the Eagles. And to everybody out there who followed us, thank you for coming by tonight. We appreciate all the comments. Like I say every week, if you come up with questions after this, when we post this, please put the question. And I look at every comment, so we will respond. We will respond. Okay. And everybody else have a great night. Be well. We'll see you next week. Take care. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.